Hi guys, just a quick introduction to this video. Everything went wrong. You may find it a bit bitty, but the information you need is in here. I'm just afraid it didn't quite flow the way I wanted it to. I'd made a couple of mistakes and it turned out there was a firmware difference in the DSLAM. So anyway, I'll turn you over to me from yesterday and enjoy the video. Take care.
So the DSLAM is down here. We've got a console cable connected to it. There are two network cables which are not currently active. We will connect it to the internal LAN in a minute. We've got our two cards in there. So our first job is going to be to get in here, set up the basics of the management card, activate those, and then we'll start setting up IP profiles and getting that ready to rock and roll. I'm going to have to make a cable up for that. What I'm probably going to do is a short cable for these that only has a few of the pairs terminated, because we're not going to need to use, I think there's 32 on each of those, so 64 outputs there, and where this is going it's not going to need more than probably 12 or absolute maximum 15 of them, and the first event certainly it needs no more than 4, so we'll make some tails up for them. But right now we're going to go sort that console cable out on the virtual machine, get that visible, and then I'll bring you back when we start the configuration.
Hi guys. Right, you've just watched a clip of me going through the hardware setup of the DSLAM, and now we're going to look through the software setup of it. I am using a VMware box to talk to this, so you are seeing a capture of the VMware client. Unfortunately, because of a bug in the older version of VMware that I've got here, this doesn't support high DPI displays properly, which means that the client you see is a little bit larger than usual. So we're connected to a COM port on our server over there. The USB port has been punched through to the virtual machine, and that shows up on this virtual machine. If we just pop in here, right there. So the first thing you're going to need before we need to go any further, and I'll put links to this down there, is going to be PuTTY. So if we run PuTTY, the Huawei terminal emulation is a little bit strange, so we need to do a couple of different things here. So we want 9600 baud. I'm straight into the console port on the front via a standard Cisco cable. 9600 baud, and we need to go over to terminal keyboard and change the backspace key to Control H. Basically what we're expecting on the DSLAM is a VT220. So you'll connect, you'll be given an empty screen, press enter, and you should be asked for a user password. We're going to be doing the setup, so we want to be logging in as root. Okay, no, it had already picked up a password somewhere. So root, and the password is MDU admin. That's Mike Delta Uniform Alpha Delta Mike India November. And you're in. Hi guys, so this is now the second attempt to record this. We found that there are at least 2 firmware versions of the MA5616. The blog, which you'll find a link for down below, deals with a more recent version. The previous version, which is what we've got on this one, does have some different commands, so we're just waiting for this to boot, and I'll just cover what's going on. So the erase configuration and save configuration on this version do not work the same way. So the erase configuration does not exist. You will need to do erase flash data to achieve the same result on this. Also, with the save configuration, there is something different with the way that save configuration works, in that it doesn't actually appear to do what you think it would. So you need to do save configuration, and I'm not sure what that actually does. On the newer firmware, it saves everything and commits it to flash. With this version, you need to do save. With this version, you need to do save data as well. Otherwise, the first reboot, you'll take everything out. So I've already been through, I've already recorded all of this, and I'm now going to do it again. So the first thing we need to do is get signed into this. So I'm connected via the COM port through the virtual machine. The USB serial adapter on the console cable has been punched through. through the virtual machine so I can access this. So we need to get this set up. So our username is root, our password is mdu admin. So I'm connected with PuTTY com3 directory 9600 board, and you do need to go and make sure in your session information that you go in and you change backspace key to be Control H, otherwise you'll have no delete, which is not helpful. So we're in. I have done an erase on this, I just want to make sure that it's actually done. So we're going to do enable, we're going to go into config, and we're going to see what MEF0, which is our config interface and management interface, is set to. So we will do display interface MEF0. Right, that hasn't actually cleared the configuration, but I'll run through how to do that anyway, and we'll just see what state our boards are in. Our boards are in auto-find, that's good. So the first thing we need to do is get that management interface sorted. So you do your enable, you do config, which you've just seen me. We change to that interface, and it's MEF0, and we need to do IP address 192.168.200.2 and subnet bits, which is 24. It should complain about that, yes, but yours shouldn't. If you do, you can clear that, and then obviously we do quit to come out of the interface, and we do our first save configuration. I'm going to do I don't need to do that because we've already done it before we got here. Next up is we need to set up our board. So if we go back to that display board 0, if you're working on serial, which will change over to SSH in a minute, you'll find that you can actually out-type the web interface, the console interface. So you can see we've got 5 slots showing here. 0 and 5 are not available. Slot 0 is a CCUE, which is your control board. You may have a CCUD, which is the other common one. You can't do anything with that. If you disable that board, remove it, the system will stop responding. You'll need to pull the board out and start again. I'm not even 100% sure it will allow you to do that. 1 and 2 are our VDSH, which is our Super Vector VDSL cards. So their auto-find means that they have been found, but they've not been configured. An important thing to bear in mind here, that when you put a board in, or remove a board and put it in, it will go back to auto-find. So if you've configured the board, you take it out, you put it back in, the configuration will potentially still apply to that slot, but it will go back to auto-find. So you can change a card out and then reconfigure that card to take over, reconfigure a new card to take over the functions of the old card, and all your profiles and everything will apply to that. That's fine. But, and here's the gotcha, you can't power the thing off, pull a board out and put it back in. Even if it's not connected to a power supply, it will detect that that board was removed. I'm not 100% sure how they do it, but it will detect that you've pulled a board out and put it back in, and you'll go back to find that the board has gone back to auto-find, as it has done here. So it leads you open to a situation whereby you've got a system set up, you're using it, you take a board out, just detect something, put the board back in, power it up, walk away, and half your channels are gone because the board needs to be re-enabled. So we need to enable those boards, and we're going to introduce the concept of frames, slots and ports here. So if you can see, we've got 5 slot IDs listed there, and this is the 5616 is frame 0 because it doesn't have any way to add extra frames. On the larger ones you can add extra frames, and you need to address the frames correctly. So we are going to confirm that board, so we are going to do board confirm, and then we are frame 0 slot 1 for the first one, and then we'll do the same again for slot 2. And now we will do save data. Right, that's going to do its thing. So what we're going to do now is switch to SSH. Now there is something to be aware of here. So we're going to go in with SSH, no problems here at all. Putty will ask you to log in, root, MDU admin, and you should really change these passwords, and you'll get this. There is information on the net as to what this is, but nothing is really that clear. It's a bit of dodgy Chinglish translation here. What it actually means is that you're logged in too many times. So if we restart session, and then we go over here, we do our quit, and we do a quit again, and then we log out, and then we can now do root MDU admin. There we go, we're in. Right, let's just put that up there. So let me just make sure that our settings are correct. Sorry, my brain's just died. Keyboard. I have spent all day trying to do this, and I should have been able to shoot this video and get everything working fairly quickly, but due to this little quirk of the way the system works, obviously I've had to do this again. Now, once you're in SSH, the problems with out-typing the console go out the window, and obviously you don't necessarily have to do things while you are relying on the USB serial console. With this, I could now punch this through to my main desktop and not have to worry about the VM, but it's just easier to film with this VM. So what we're going to do is we'll just check our boards again. So we will do enable, we will go into config mode, and we will do display board, and we want frame 0. There you go, our boards are there, they're active. At this stage the boards will be generating a DSL carrier. You won't be able to do anything if you do get a connection, and there's no guarantee you will be able to connect correctly because everything is at its defaults. So what we're going to do now is move on to configuring the actual cards themselves. At this point the basics of your DSLAM are done. We will go through and configure the gigabit Ethernet ports and the SFP fiber port shortly, but for now we're just going to go in and start looking at how we get an ADSL connection, VDSL connection up and running. So I'm just changing my page on my notes here next to me. So we're going to switch protocol to H.248. Again, I'll put a link down there on what that actually means. Most of these, especially if they are brand new, as this one is, will default to this, so this will actually generate an error message. But for using equipment that's been used in the UK or designed for use in the UK and probably the States, you want this on. There you go, we expected that. So now what we need to do is look at line profiles, channel profiles and templates. So this whole system of line profiles, channel profiles and templates is designed to make configuration of your VDSL connection much easier. So a VDSL line profile gives you an idea of how your line is going to be treated, what protocols will be used, what the settings for the line are, whether we will be applying power management, what the acceptable signal to noise ratios are for the profile. So these are the profiles you hear BT and other people speaking about, and you can have these profiles apply to certain signal to noise ratio ranges, so you can have lower speeds and lower settings. So you can have lower speeds and more conservative settings on noisier lines. The system will manage these profiles to some degree, applying the appropriate profile to the appropriate line depending on the noise. And this is why you're told not to repeatedly reboot modems, and why you're told doing so will affect your profile. Quite often, each time you reset your modem within a set period of time, the DSLAM will see that as a fault and that the link failed, and it needs to try more conservative settings, and it will work its way down the profiles until it gets a profile that works. This will generally mean that it will pick a profile that's based on the number of retries, or it's based on a poorer signal to noise ratio than you actually have, and you'll drop the speed. As you see me add the profiles, you will see how this works. So we're just going to add a line profile now. I'm just going through my notes. So again, if you are following along with this video and you're configuring one of these, it might be beneficial for you to have my blog up as well. So what we're going to do is we are setting up VDSL. Oh, it helps if you click where you're going. So we are setting up VDSL. We are setting up a line profile. And we're going to quick add, which means we're going to give it everything it needs on this line. Now, I'm not going to go into exhaustive detail on what we're putting in here. I'm literally going to give you the very, very basics of what I'm doing. There is a link in the blog and a link I will add down below that explains exactly what all these numbers mean. So we are going to add profile 3. We're going to do everything on 3 for some reason. I don't know why I've done that. And these are the default ones that we use. Transmission mode 1, bit swap settings, I'm having some keyboard issues now, and we want our adaptation details. I have a little program that I've used that also generates these lines for me, which unfortunately some of the stuff that goes into these configurations and things like my configuration profile generator are proprietary to us, and they're, I wouldn't say business confidential business documents, but they're not something I really want to make available to our competition. What did I spell wrong there? So I've got a USB keyboard that has been getting progressively more and more dodgy, and this is what you're seeing here. Not to mention I'm deprived of coffee, and this is the second time around I've done it. And we'll give this a name. Let's VDSL line profile 3. Bam! There we go, our profile's added. So we now need to configure the VDSL channel. So what we've configured there is the underlying hardware, how the transceivers and the modem themselves are going to be configured. What we now need to configure is how the VDSL data that's on top of that is going to be used. So we need to set up a VDSL channel profile, which I will do now. We're going to use a simple we're going to create a simple template. The usual template I use here is quite a lot different because we're dealing multiple VLANs on one modem. If you've looked at your white BT modem, you'll notice you've got 2 ports, and we configure them as 2 separate networks. Again, it's a bit of our secret sauce, and I don't really want to put that out. So I got ahead of myself there, so ignore the line just above there. So we've done our line profile. We need to do our channel profile, which is what I was talking about. The channel profile determines how the line is going to be used, maximum speeds, maximum transmit rates, and thresholds, and things like interleave and stuff like that. So we will define that now. So this is a VDSL, and we are doing a channel profile. We're going to do a quick add again, and we're going to go for profile 3 again. We are going into path mode, PTM. Oh, pays to look at your screen, especially when you have a keyboard that's a bit odd. Path mode PTM. This is a horrible one to type in. Right, sorry, I got myself tangled up. Path mode both. So you may recognise some of these settings from setting up a modem. don't think this is the one I want. Make sure we get enough zeros in here, because this is these define our line speeds. Again, I will post a link to the Huawei documentation that explains what this is. The Huawei document is not necessarily incredibly clear, but it does give you the information you need to actually understand this line and then start formulating your own. And we're going to call this VDSL channel profile 3. See if it takes that. It does indeed. Right, so now we're going to bind this all together in our line template. Now this is where the flexibility comes in. So if you have to specify your channel profile and your line profile for each individual port, then different combinations are going to require that you specify these every time for every port. The line templates mean that you can make up templates to add to these lines with predefined line profiles. So if you've got two lines that have different line profiles but the same channel profiles, then if you can only do it by the channel profile and the line profiles, you would essentially need to add 4 different profiles to do it. Whereas using channel templates, you can choose the profiles that you're using, and that would mean to do with 2 lines you'd need 2 templates and 3 channel lines. And by going this route, it means that we can actually just configure these 2 line profiles, these 2 profiles. We can configure the channel, we can configure the template profile, and then we can configure everything with just those 3 lines. As you can see, some of those lines are not fun to create. So we're going to create our template now using the 2 profiles we've got. So we are doing VDSL. So we are adding a line template. We are doing a quick add again. We're going to go for number 3. We're going to go with line 3, which is our channel profile 3. Our first channel, we're only dealing with 1 channel here, will also be our first channel will also be, first and only channel will also be our channel profile 3, and name VDSL line template 3. Bam, done. Right, so we're done. As far as we're concerned there, we've got our line profiles. Now in reality, our channel profiles are quite different to what you've seen up there, because we're using multiple VLANs and things on, and our line templates are slightly different as well. But what you would do is define multiple templates based on things like the line SNR. You can base them on distance, you can base them on number of retries, and the system will manage between them. And it also means that you have the flexibility to say, you know, this is not right. So one of our sites, we have a 1.7 kilometer run, which we did with the Versas. The Versas are not as flexible, and it struggled, mostly because 1.7 kilometers is, you know, a good distance for VDSL, and the Versas were trying to handshake at full rate down that line. It wouldn't have been a great line anyway, because it was crossing mains power, it was buried and things like that, but it was only ever trying to handshake at full speed. So what you'd do here is you'd create a profile that handshakes at a much lower speed. We had 1 camera and some ticketing stuff down there. We did not need 74 meg. Even 10 meg would have been enough for that. So we'd have created a 10 meg profile and forced that profile on the line, which would have reduced the number of retries and issues downstream. So we're done there. Now is a good time to save up. So we do our save configuration, which I have no idea what that actually does. and then we'll do our save data. We will wait for that to come back and tell us what's going on. So what we're going to do now is set up the VLAN and tie it to the relevant ports. We're going to set up the Ethernet port and the SFP port on the front. And we are only working with VLAN 1 here. We're not working with any other VLANs. So again, you're missing out a chunk of what we do on our final config. So the first thing we need to do is we want to take our put our ports in gigabit Ethernet mode. So by default out of the box, your GE port on the front is a gigabit Ethernet port, and your optical port is set as a GPON connection. Sorry, I had to remember that. So we need to take that out of GPON and have that so we can actually use it as an SFP port. So we're going to do port mode, and we are on frame 0, we're on card 0, which is our CCUE, and we're on port 0, and we want to jam that in gigabit Ethernet. And yes, we do want to do that. And then we want to do the same for port 1. And there we go. So those two ports are now configured as gigabit Ethernet. We can chuck a normal SFP into the ONT port, and that will behave perfectly acceptably as a fibre uplink. So now we need to bind port VLAN. We need to bind VLAN 1 to these ports. It is normally done by default, but we're going to do it anyway. So we're going to control our ports. We're going to configure the VLAN on those ports with VLAN 1, and we're going to tie VLAN 1 to frame 0, slot 0, port 0. And obviously it tells us it's already there, which is expected. We're going to say the same for port 2. And again, as expected, it's already there. So we now have our profiles. We have our line profile, we have our channel profile, we have our VDSL template. Our uplink ports are now set on the default VLAN, which is great. So anything that comes in now is going to go in and out of those ports. So what we need to do now is start binding the service ports. The idea with the service ports here is to separate between physical ports and service ports. So a service port is what you are delivering to the customer. That is the encapsulation of all the profiles we've done. That contains information on the VLANs that will be present on that network, and basically defines how that connection is going to be handled by the DSLAM. What's going to happen with it, what VLANs are there, where's it going to go. A service port is then bound to a physical port, and then the physical port obviously connects to the customer. The idea with the service ports is you can rebind these service ports to other ports. So if you have a faulty port, you can lift the customer off of that port, put them onto a new port, and then rebind the service port to that new physical port, which means you don't then have to reconfigure the port. Again, it's another step, and you'll find a lot of that with this equipment. It's another step to making the management side of this a lot less onerous. Even on the telnet interface or the SSH interface where we are now, managing these it's command line based, but it's really not a headache to do. Once you understand the way the logic works, it's great. So we're going to do a basic one here. Again, we've got a lot of secret sauce in this line, so I can't show you that, but we're just going to bind a service port straight to one of the VLANs. So we're going to go service, we're not. We're going to go service port 0, so that identifies our service port. Our service port 0 is going to be bound to VLAN 1, or VLAN. We are talking about a VDSL port here. We are going to want it in PTM mode, and then we're going to bind to our port. So we've already done the show boards. Let me just go up so I can double check that. So our first board is in slot 1. So we're going to go. Our port is in frame 0. We are on board 1. And I believe we start at 0 for our ports. Bam. That's done. So you can add a lot more to these service ports. There's a lot more detail in. You can do multi-VLAN and things down that. Like you can do multi-VLAN and things like that, because as I said already, we push a second VLAN to the second port on the modem. You could in theory tie this port to VLAN 101, which means all of the BT open reach equipment will just work, including the BT hubs and anything that's been configured for BT service. And to be fair, the majority of UK broadband uses VLAN 101, so that's something you can do. We update the firmware on everything we use, mostly because we want any telco stuff out of the way, so we stick on a completely different VLAN, and we don't even try and make our kit work with the off-the-shelf kit. It has an added bonus. It's not strong security, but it does allow us to say that someone can't walk up with a BT hub or a ECI white modem, plug it into our network, and gain access to the network. Obviously, we would normally only activate ports as we need them as well. And this is what's going on when your ports are activated, deactivated, or you do a lift and move on a port. A lot of this is what you're seeing now. Dealing with the service ports like this, by far the easiest way of doing it, and I'm going to add some more ports here, by far the easiest way of doing it is to do it with Notepad. So let me just do this port, and I will show what I mean. So if you're using PuTTY, you can just highlight that there. PuTTY will automatically select and copy. Paste your line in, and you're off. So we've done port 1, we need to do port 2, and so on. So let's just do a couple. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll do 7. So we need to change all of these to reflect the correct service port. And obviously we need to bind these now to the correct DSL port. Because we like to keep things simple and we rarely have to do a lift and shift on an event site, we will generally keep the service port representing the actual physical port. And once you've done that, you can do Control C and right click in PuTTY. That's done. Port 3. 4, 5, 6, and that's 7. So as you go through the service port for each one of those ports will become active, and they will be capable of supporting a full connection, and they will become configured. This is a case of you make the change, it is instantly active. So we're going to do a save data now. Oops, save data. Howdy! So it's Richard from the future here, and as I mentioned on the subtitles there is a step we forgot. You'll see me struggle to get the profiles behaving properly shortly, assuming I don't cut that out, and we have missed a step. The step is also missing on my blog, so I need to get in and edit that. There's some issues with the blog right now. So we just need to go back into Enable and back into Config. And what we've done is we've not bound the template to a specific port. So all we need to do is go to our card that we're going to work with. We're going to work with card 1. So interface, and we are going for our VDSL interfaces, and we're going for frame 0 card 1. We are now in there. So this act of changing the template does take the connection down. So again, this may be something that while you've been on phone to your provider you've actually experienced. So we're going to turn port 0 off. Port 0 is now off, and then we're going to reactivate it with our new line template. So that is 0, and then we specify our template index. It may complain because I've already done this, and then we just do quit. So we can have a look, see what's going on. So we can do, we can't type. and we are looking at 010. And there we go, we've got the detailed information about what that port's actually up to, which, because nothing over there is turned on, is absolutely nothing. So if you don't do that step, you will find that your templates will be ignored and it will use the default templates. Again, if I show it in the video, I worked around this because I'd forgotten this step. Anyway, back you go, I'm done. Oops, save data, save date. And then we'll do a save configuration as well. I'm going to stop here. There we go. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to go over there and have a look and see how we're configured hardware wise, and we'll have a look and see if we can get something up and connected. So I'll be right back.
So we're back over at the DSLAM. You can see I've got 4 lines terminated in that card there, and you can see we're all up and good. You can see our connections there, and up here we have one of the white modems, which you can see is now handshook, and you can see that we've got a VDSL connection here, and this is our JDSU, so that means we're good, we're up. I'm not sure we're on the right port there, so what we're going to do is we'll go back over to the machine and we'll see what port we're connected to, because that profile does not look right. So let's go back over to the PC and see what's going on. So back over here, you can see we're up, and that's not a great connection. I'll need to work on that and see what's going on, but that could be a wiring error, and obviously this one is up. So if we now go, how do I film this and use it as well? So we want to go back a level, and we want to go to our network, and will network status tell us what we want here? Yes, it will. That's not the IP address I'd expect to see, but then again that's because this is not where I am expecting to be. Let's go back to mode and operation. Okay, that's fine. There we go, one setup. So that's using a static IP address. We don't want that, that's why that's doing that. Login mode, PPOE, yep, that's all good. Let's come out of there, come out of there again. I think I might need to tell this to do other things. Oh no, there you go. I'm not necessarily expecting this to work straight away. Nope, I'm not necessarily expecting this to work straight away, but we'll see what it does. That is receiving data, but we've not got a WAN yet. So I'm not overly concerned about that, because we've not done a few other bits of back-end configuration, and I need to do some tweaking and adjusting. Also, this is fairly new to me. I'm still learning how this works, so some of the problem here could be the way I'm using this. But we'll plug into that DSL modem and see what it's doing. Doesn't have our label onto it, may not be configured, but we're there, we're up and running, the link's done, and we should be passing data. So I'll plug a laptop.
So just had to remind myself of the command. So we activated our ports on, let me just go back up and remind me, I'm fairly sure I remember where they were, but we activated our ports on board 1, and we activated ports 0 through to 7. So if we go through and look at the state of our VDSL ports, you can see on board 1 we have nothing active. So obviously this tells you what's going on, if loopback is enabled, the line template that's in use, alarm templates which I haven't covered, and the group ID which I haven't covered. So we've got we've got no ports there that are active. If we press space, we can see on board 2 our first two ports which correspond to the JDSU and the DSL modem are active, but they don't really have anything associated with them. So what we're going to do, although they've defaulted to template 1, we're going to go and move that connector, and then we'll double check what template has actually been bound to that port as well. So yes, we will go and move them and we will see what happens. Now it occurs to me while they're retraining that the interface that's plugged into that DSLAM doesn't actually have anything configured on it. So let's go in and make a few things work. So we'll go into PFSense, which is what's running everything back here. I don't know that that interface is even bound. No, I don't think the interface is bound at all. So we've got EM2 available. EM2 corresponds with the network port on that machine. Let's just check. We have that connected. That's good. That's fine. And yes, I know it's an old version of VMware. So we're going to add that. I don't really want to call it OP1, but I can't change it at the moment. We'll go over to OP1. We're going to enable that. We're going to call it DSLAM. And we will chuck that on a static, and we'll chuck that on a 10 dot. And this is a common gotcha. If you don't set this correctly to 24, it will default to 32 and you'll get nothing. We're not blocking bogon networks or private addresses, mostly because we're entirely working with them. We're going to apply the changes. I think it got that. Yep, that's fine. Settings have already been applied, fine. And we need to go into DHCP server. We need to go to DSLAM. We want to enable it. We're going to allow all for now. 10.10.10.20. So we always leave a block at the bottom of the address range on this kind of thing. It means that any equipment we need to hide on there is room to do it. And likewise, we will quite often leave a gap at the top, but only a small one for this. That's all fine. We'll stick with all defaults on that, so we'll save that. And we should be getting some life there, so we will go back now to this and we'll have a quick look at those port states again. And you can see we've got two activated here, and they do say they're using the correct. They are using a line template, but I don't think I've bound the right template to them, so we might need to check that. But I will stop you again. We'll go over there and we'll see what's happening now.
So we've sorted a problem. Our modem's up and happy. So obviously this system is capable of much greater speed, so why have we throttled it like this? Quite simply, we don't need this level of speed at these endpoints, and this particular card only supports 17A modulation, so we'll probably swap this out with one of the other cards we've got. As I said, this DSLAM's never been configured. So we're all up and running. The actual cause of the problem was I hadn't connected the data cable between the DSLAM and the Firewall, so my error. But there you go, that's it, that's all up, that's all configured, that's working the way it should do. So there you go, how to set up a Huawei DSLAM. Take care, bye.